A man retreats to an isolated countryside house to recover from a private collapse he refuses to name. The first night, something invisible sits on the edge of his bed, light enough to doubt, heavy enough to remember. Each night it returns with greater certainty, teaching his body a new kind of fear, the fear of being measured. The house begins to behave like it's listening, adjusting itself around the ritual. The protagonist's mind fractures between rational explanations and a growing suspicion that the thing isn't haunting him, it's training him. As insomnia deepens, the boundary between sitting beside and sitting inside dissolves. In the end, the question isn't whether the presence is real, but whether reality needs his permission to keep him human. The first time it sat on my bed, I blamed the mattress. That's what you do when something impossible happens in a place you've just moved into. You look for a mechanical explanation. Springs, weight distribution, old floorboards shifting under humidity. You tell yourself it's the house learning you the way a new pair of shoes learns your foot. I'd unpacked only what I needed: a mattress on the floor, a lamp, a charger, a box of canned food. The rest stayed in my car, like a promise I was still temporary here, like I was only visiting my own life and could leave when I felt better. The countryside doesn't feel quiet the way people in cities imagine. It isn't empty. It's full of sounds that don't care whether you're listening: crickets, branches, distant dogs, wind moving through tall grass like a hand through hair. But inside the house at night, there was a quiet that felt personal, a quiet that behaved. The house was older than the listing photos suggested. White paint yellowed to nicotine color, even though the place didn't smell of cigarettes. The hallway narrow enough that you brushed the walls if you didn't walk perfectly straight. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that was too small for the way it echoed. I chose the back bedroom because it had only 1 window, and the window faced a tangle of trees so dense you couldn't tell where the forest ended and the night began. I told myself that was practical. Less light, less noise, better sleep. Sleep was the whole point. I hadn't slept properly in months, not since the thing I refused to name began living in my body like a second heartbeat. Not since morning started arriving with that sense of being late for something invisible. Not since my phone became an object that could hurt me without moving. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that doesn't make you sleepy. It makes you hollow. And hollow things echo. That first night, I fell asleep fast, the way people do when they've been running from themselves too long. I remember closing my eyes and thinking, with a weird, detached optimism, tomorrow, I'll be a person again. I woke at 2:17 a.m., not because of a sound, because of a shift. The mattress dipped near my feet, subtle at first, like a hand pressing down and then releasing. I lay still, eyes open in the dark, waiting for the sensation to pass. It didn't. The dip deepened in small increments, careful and measured. A slow, deliberate descent that suggested weight being applied gradually, the way someone sits down gently so they don't wake you. The edge of the mattress compressed. The blanket tightened across my shins. And then, stillness. Not the stillness of nothing's happening. The stillness of something has finished moving and is now present. My throat closed. My heart didn't race immediately. It did something worse. It slowed, as if my body had decided panic would waste energy. My mind tried to assemble a reasonable image to attach to the feeling. A cat, a raccoon, a branch falling against the house. But the weight was wrong for an animal. It didn't fidget, it didn't redistribute, it didn't breathe, it simply sat. I stared at the ceiling I couldn't see and tried to convince myself I was dreaming. I performed the usual tests, wiggling my toes, rolling my tongue against my teeth, checking whether my thoughts felt too vivid. Everything was sharp, real. The air smelled faintly of old wood and something colder underneath, like rain-soaked stone. I didn't move, Minutes passed like hours, then the weight lifted, slowly, carefully in reverse. The mattress rose, the blanket loosened. The pressure released with the same cautious politeness with which it had arrived. I waited for a sound, for footsteps, for a door creaking, nothing. The house remained quiet, listening in a way I couldn't explain. I turned on the lamp. The room was empty. No shadow in the corner, no movement at the window, no smear on the floor. Just the mattress, rumpled where my legs had been pinned, and the silence holding its breath like it had expected me to speak. I slept with the lamp on after that. Not because light makes you safe. Because light makes you feel less alone, and in that moment alone felt like a door left open. In the morning, the daylight repaired everything. It always does at first. It makes you embarrassed for being scared. It makes the night seem like a private overreaction. It offers you the illusion that reality is stable again. I brewed coffee with hands that shook only slightly. My brain rehearsed explanations the way a lawyer rehearses defense. Hypnic jerk, sleep paralysis, new bed, stress. I believed them enough to function. And then I noticed the dust. The floorboards in the bedroom were dusty in the way old rooms are dusty. Fine particles settled evenly like a thin grey skin. I hadn't swept. I hadn't walked around much. Near the bed, in the dust, there was an oval impression. Not a footprint, not a shoe. A smooth depression, as if something had pressed down without edges. Like a kneecap. Like the base of something that didn't need feet. I knelt beside it and stared until my eyes burned. Then I wiped it away with my sleeve. That's the first confession of horror that no one talks about. The urge to destroy evidence. Not because you don't want to know, because you do. I told myself I wouldn't sleep in that room again. I told myself I'd move the mattress, set up in the living room, keep the windows open, make the house feel less like a sealed container. But by evening I was tired in a way that made decision-making feel like climbing stairs. The bed was in the back room. The lamp was there. My phone was charging by the wall. I went back like a person returning to a bad habit because it's familiar. That night I left the lamp off. I wanted to prove I could. I lay on my back staring into the dark until shapes began to suggest themselves in the corners. The forest outside the window made its own low sound, branches rubbing, insects pulsing, a distant owl that sounded like a question. At 2:17 a.m., I woke again. Same time, same suddenness. My eyes opened as if something had pulled a string. This time, the mattress dipped closer to my torso, not at my feet, at my side. The bed sank beside my hip, slow and precise, the way a person lowers themselves onto the edge after sitting on the floor a long time, and their knees hurt. The blanket tightened around my waist, the sheet creased, and then something touched the mattress, not on top of the blanket, not through it, but against the side, as if a hand had braced itself against the bed. The pressure was gentle, almost considerate. The worst kind of intimacy is the kind that doesn't force itself. It assumes you'll accept it. My mouth went dry. I wanted to roll away, but my body refused to move quickly. It felt like my muscles were waiting for permission from something other than my mind. I listened for breath. There was none. The silence around the weight wasn't empty. It was dense, like a pocket of air with different rules. Then, impossibly, I felt the faintest shift of heat. Not warm like skin, warm like something that had been cold for a long time and had found a place to rest. And with that warmth came a thought that did not feel like mine. Don't look. I didn't know how to understand that thought. I hadn't heard a voice. There was no whisper. The words simply existed in my head, like an instruction I'd always known. I clenched my jaw. A second thought followed, softer, almost patient. You can't see me anyway. My pulse spiked. I wanted to deny it, but denial would have required pretending those thoughts were mine, and I could feel the difference. My thoughts have edges. They come with context, with internal noise. These were smooth, clean, delivered. The weight remained. Minutes stretched. Then the mattress rose again. The pressure lifted. The heat withdrew, leaving my skin feeling suddenly too exposed, like a blanket had been yanked away. I waited in the dark for the house to creak, for the floor to complain, for some evidence of movement. Nothing. When I turned the lamp on, the room was empty again. But the bed, my temporary refuge, looked slightly different. The sheet was pulled tighter on the side where it had sat, as if something had smoothed it after leaving. That detail, care, tidiness, made bile rise in my throat, because it suggested intention, not a random phenomenon, not an accident, a ritual. On the third day, I stopped calling the house the house. In my notes, I'd started writing again, not for creativity but for sanity. I began calling it the room, because the house felt too large to contain what was happening. The bedroom was the stage. The rest was just hallway and walls. I tried to stay awake on the third night. I drank coffee too late. I sat at the kitchen table with the lamp on and kept my eyes on the clock, daring the numbers to betray me. At 2:10 a.m., my eyelids grew heavy. At 2:13, I felt my thoughts smear. At 2:16, my head dipped. At 2:17, I woke in my bed. Not in the kitchen, in the bedroom, on the mattress, with my lamp off. I sat up so fast my spine crackled. My phone was beside the bed, unplugged, screen dark. I don't remember walking there. I don't remember lying down. I don't remember choosing sleep. The air felt colder than it should have, and the bed, already, was dipping at the edge. It was there. It had been waiting for me to arrive, or it had brought me. The weight settled with confidence now, no longer cautious, as if the first nights had been practice, and tonight was performance. The mattress sank deeper. The blanket tightened across my thighs. It sat closer to my torso than before, close enough that if it had been a person, our shoulders would have brushed. I couldn't breathe properly. My chest rose shallowly, afraid of disturbing it. A pressure touched the mattress near my hand, again like a brace, like someone leaning forward slightly. Then came the thought, placed in my mind with gentle certainty. You don't have to be awake for this. I swallowed hard. What? I tried to speak and my voice came out as a broken whisper. The weight did not change. The thought returned, almost soothing. You've been awake too long. Something about that line, its accuracy, its calm, made my vision blur with sudden tears, because it sounded like empathy. And empathy from an invisible thing sitting on your bed at night is the most violating kind of intimacy imaginable. It wasn't just present, it was attentive. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to think of something else, to push back with memory, with logic, with rage. But my mind betrayed me. The first image that came was the one I had been trying not to see for months. Wet asphalt, headlights flaring, the moment before impact where time elongates and you have just enough awareness to understand you are about to become the person you will hate. I heard the ghost of my brother's laughter. Then the weight beside me shifted, barely. The mattress compressed and redistributed as if it had adjusted posture, and the thought that came next was almost tender. That's why you came here. My throat tightened. No, I whispered. The presence didn't argue. It simply sat. And in that stillness, I understood something that made the room feel suddenly too small to contain my panic. It wasn't there to scare me. It was there to stay. By morning, the sheets were smoothed again on its side, and on the edge of the mattress, where the fabric met the air, there was a faint indentation, like fingertips pressing lightly, testing, not a claw, not a scratch, just a mark that suggested hands without skin. I stood over the bed, trembling, and for the first time I said the thing I'd been refusing to say since I arrived. This is happening. The words were meant to anchor me to reality. But the moment I spoke them, the house grew quiet in a new way. alert, receptive, like it had been waiting for my acknowledgement. And from somewhere very close, close enough that the sound seemed to originate inside the walls, the quietest response arrived. Not in my ears, in my mind. Good. The worst part wasn't that it came back. The worst part was how expected it felt. Expectation changes fear. It removes surprise and replaces it with anticipation. And anticipation is a slow poison. It settles into your muscles. It teaches your body to prepare before your mind has decided anything is wrong. By the fourth night, my body woke before 2:17 a.m. I opened my eyes at 2:14, heart already beating too fast, breath shallow, skin prickling as if my nerves had been warned in advance. I lay perfectly still, staring into the dark, counting seconds in my head. 2:15, 2:16. At 2:17 the mattress dipped. Not abruptly, not experimentally, confidently. The bed sank beside me with the certainty of something that knew exactly how much weight to apply. No hesitation, no adjustment. It sat like someone returning to a seat they considered theirs. The blanket tightened across my legs. The air beside my shoulder felt occupied. I didn't scream. That fact terrified me because fear should have demanded noise. Panic should have demanded motion. But instead, something inside me folded inward, like a part of my nervous system had decided resistance was inefficient. The presence didn't rush. It never rushed. That was part of its power. It behaved like time belonged to it, not me. I focused on my breathing, counting inhales and exhales like I'd learned in therapy. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. The presence shifted slightly, and the mattress compressed closer to my torso, not touching me, but close enough that the boundary felt deliberate. Then the thought arrived, not whispered, not heard. You keep waking yourself up. My jaw clenched. That's not you, I whispered into the dark. That's my anxiety. The mattress didn't change. The thought returned just as calm. Your anxiety doesn't sit down. A cold tremor passed through my chest. Because it was right. Anxiety vibrates, it buzzes, it rushes. This thing waited. It felt like something ancient practicing patience. During the day, I became hyper-aware of the house. Not in the paranoid sense, not yet, but in the way you become aware of a person you know is watching you even when they pretend not to be. The walls felt closer. The hallway felt longer. Sounds carried farther than they should have. I stopped closing doors, not because I wanted openness, because closed doors felt like promises I couldn't keep. I tried leaving again. The car started this time. The engine purred obediently, almost cheerfully. Relief surged through me so fast it made me dizzy. I drove down the dirt road, faster than I had the first time, tires kicking up dust, trees blurred past, the sky opened wider ahead, then the road curved, and curved again, and again. I slowed, heart sinking. A dead tree shaped like a crooked finger appeared on the left. I had passed it already. I accelerated. The same tree, same shape, same scar in the bark. The road didn't loop dramatically. It didn't trap me with obvious impossibility. It repeated itself politely, like a suggestion. I stopped the car and turned off the engine. Silence flooded in, thick and watchful. From somewhere in the forest, not close, not far, the presence acknowledged me. You're not ready to be away yet? I didn't answer. I turned the car around. The road back was straight. That night, the presence didn't wait until 2:17. It arrived early. I was lying on my side, facing the wall, when the mattress dipped behind me. The weight settled with a familiarity that made my stomach twist. It was closer now, so close I could feel heat. Not warmth, not body heat, but the absence of cold, like something that displaced chill rather than generating warmth. I could feel it behind my back. The space between us felt intentional, measured like inches on a ruler. Then something new happened. The mattress compressed near my shoulder. as if it had leaned forward, not onto me, toward me. The thought came slowly, almost thoughtfully. You don't like sleeping alone. I felt my throat tighten. That's not true, I whispered. The presence didn't contradict me. It did something worse. You came here because being alone felt safer than being seen. Images surged uninvited, hospital lights, unread messages, my phone buzzing and buzzing until I turned it face down like a corpse. I didn't come here for you, I said. A pause. Then closer now, so close the air felt altered. I didn't come for you either, my heart hammered. Then why are you here? The weight shifted, subtle and deliberate. Because you left room. That sentence landed like a verdict. I realized then that the presence wasn't bound to the house the way ghosts in stories are bound. It wasn't attached to walls or land. It was attached to states, fatigue, isolation, guilt left untreated long enough to ferment. I turned onto my back slowly, unable to stop myself. The ceiling stared back. The presence remained invisible, but I knew where it was. I knew the exact place on the mattress where it sat. I knew how much space it occupied. I knew that if I reached out, my hand would meet resistance. The thought arrived again, softer now. You don't have to see me for this to work. I closed my eyes. That was my mistake. Because the moment I did, I felt it. Not a touch, a pressure, faint but undeniable near my chest, like something had placed its weight inside the mattress, directly beneath my rib cage. My breath hitched. The presence leaned closer, and for the first time since it arrived, I felt something unmistakable. It was not emotion, it was curiosity, not malicious, analytical, like a scientist observing a reaction. Your heart rate changes when you think of him, the thought noted. I shook my head weakly. Don't. The mattress compressed again. You don't say his name out loud anymore. My vision blurred. I don't want to talk about this. The presence paused, as if considering etiquette. Then, you don't have to talk. The pressure eased slightly, but it did not leave. It stayed beside me until morning. Not moving, not leaving, just being there. By the sixth night, sleep felt less like rest and more like an appointment. I didn't try to fight it anymore. I lay down and waited. The presence arrived. Same spot, same weight, same quiet certainty. And with it came something I hadn't anticipated. Comfort. That realization horrified me, because fear had begun to mix with relief. The relief of not being alone with my thoughts. The relief of something else carrying part of the night. I hated myself for that. The presence sensed the shift immediately. You're adapting, it observed. I don't want to, I whispered. Another pause. That's not a requirement. The mattress dipped slightly closer. And in that moment, before sleep took me, before my defenses reassembled, I understood the true danger. It wasn't trying to scare me. It wasn't feeding on terror. It was teaching my body a new normal. And once something becomes normal, you stop asking when it arrived. End of chapter 2. If you want to continue, say only. By the time I realized I was waiting for it, it had already won something. Not my sanity, not my body, something smaller, more humiliating, my routine. People don't talk about how horror becomes ordinary. They imagine fear as a constant scream in the mind, but it isn't. Fear is a schedule. Fear is adjusting your life around a presence you pretend not to believe in. Fear is leaving a lamp on because you don't want to admit you need it. Fear is noticing the clock reads 2:13 and thinking, without words, soon. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee and stared at the hallway that led to the back bedroom. The house was silent the way a room becomes silent when someone important is about to speak. My phone had no signal. My car worked only when the place allowed it. The nearest neighbor, if there was one, might as well have been on another planet. Isolation, I learned, isn't emptiness. It's a closed system, and closed systems don't like loose variables. I tried to make rules. Rules give you the illusion that the world is still negotiable. I moved the mattress into the living room. I didn't tell myself why. I framed it as practicality, as controlling my environment, but the truth was simple. I wanted to break the pattern. I wanted to prove the bed wasn't the ritual, that I wasn't predictable. I dragged the mattress across the floor, leaving a faint smear of dust behind it. The sound was loud, ugly, embarrassing. It made the house feel awake. When I finally lay down in the living room, the ceiling above me felt higher, less claustrophobic. The window looked out onto the porch and the trees beyond, a wider view that made the darkness feel less intimate. I kept the lamp on low. I watched the clock. 2:10, 2:12, 2:14. My throat tightened. At 2:17, the mattress dipped. Not beside my legs, not by my hip, directly behind my head. The depression formed near the top edge as if something had sat down right where it could loom over me. Cold flooded my scalp. I didn't move. I couldn't. The weight settled with a patience that felt familiar now. And then the thought arrived smoother than ever. You moved the bed. I swallowed hard. Yes. The word slipped out before I could stop it. I heard myself answer and felt immediate nausea, as if I'd swallowed something rotten. There was a pause, an attentive silence like a listener noting your compliance. Then, why? My mouth went dry. Because, I started, then stopped. Because admitting the truth would mean naming it. Because naming it would mean giving it a shape, and shapes can be claimed. The presence didn't pressure me. It didn't need to. It waited, and in that waiting, I felt my own mind fray at the edges. Silence becomes torture when you know something is listening for words. Finally, I whispered, I wanted you to leave me alone. The mattress compressed slightly deeper, like a quiet laugh that didn't need sound. I am alone with you. Those words landed in me like cold water. Not, I'm not alone. You're not alone. I am alone with you, as if it considered me its only company, as if the rest of the world didn't matter. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes watered. Then, softly, almost gently, it delivered the next thought. Your house is small. Your mind is smaller. I felt my pulse spike. Stop. The presence leaned forward, or the mattress compressed in a way that mimicked leaning. You don't sleep, you rehearse, you replay, you punish. I clenched my fist so hard my nails bit skin. This is different, it continued. This is rest. Something in me recoiled at that word, rest, because it was true that part of me, shameful, exhausted, had begun to feel relief when it arrived. Relief that I didn't have to carry the night alone. Relief that something else could occupy the space where my guilt usually sat. That relief was the doorway. I understood that with a clarity so sharp it felt like pain. The next day, I found the first proof that it wasn't confined to the bed. I hadn't been looking for it. That's always how it happens. I was washing dishes when I felt pressure behind me, close, quiet, like someone standing in the kitchen doorway watching without speaking. My shoulders tightened. I didn't turn. The presence didn't sit. It didn't touch. But the air changed the way it changed at night, becoming denser and colder in a localized pocket. I set the plate down slowly. There's nothing there, I said aloud. Not to it, but to myself. The thought arrived instantly. There is. A beat. Then, not where you look, where you assume. I swallowed hard. What are you? Silence. Not refusal. Consideration. Then faintly, I am what notices. My stomach twisted. I don't understand. You don't have to. You have to continue. The pressure behind me eased, as if it had stepped back. Then the kitchen chair, nearest the table, shifted. Not scraped dramatically. Shifted by an inch, like something had bumped it with a knee. I spun around. Nothing. The chair sat slightly askew, its front legs no longer aligned with the floorboard seam. The house was empty, but the air felt satisfied, like it had demonstrated a concept. I stood there shaking, the water still running, the sink filling, until I forced myself to turn it off. In that moment, I realized the worst possibility. It didn't need visibility. It didn't need a body. It needed participation, and I had already given it that. That night, it didn't sit on the mattress. It sat on the floor beside it. I knew because I heard the subtle compression of the carpet beneath an invisible weight. I knew because my blanket tightened near the edge, as if the air beside it had become occupied. I knew because the thought arrived from lower than before, as if its presence now originated closer to the ground. "You moved again," it noted. I hadn't. The mattress was still in the living room. I understood then that it wasn't tracking furniture. It was tracking me. "I can't do this," I whispered. A pause, then, "You already are." It shifted slowly, like someone adjusting posture to get comfortable. And then it said something that made my blood feel thick. "Tell me what you won't say out loud." My throat closed. "No." The presence remained still. Not angry, not impatient, just present. An unmovable fact. "You carry it into sleep," it said softly. "Every night, you carry it into the morning. You carry it into every silence." I felt tears burn. "You brought a house so far away because you thought distance makes guilt lighter." I whispered. "Stop." "Say it," it urged. Not a demand, more like a suggestion. "Say the name you are trying not to feed." My chest tightened violently. I knew what it wanted. It wanted my brother's name, because names in this place felt like offerings, because saying a name in the presence of something that notices felt like opening a file and sliding it across a table. I shook my head hard. The presence waited. The silence stretched, then gently, more gently than it had any right to. "You don't have to say his name. You can say yours." My mouth went dry. "Why?" A pause. Then, "Because yours is the one you still live in." That sentence cracked something in me. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a monster line. It was a truth stated by something that had been watching me with the intimacy of an autopsy. I whispered, "I don't want to live in it." The presence leaned forward, or the pressure in the air shifted toward me, then let me hold it. I felt nausea rise. "No." "You're tired," it said, almost kind. "You can rest. I can sit here. You can stop being in charge for a while." That was the moment I understood the abyss in full. This wasn't a haunting, it was a proposal. The next day, I found myself talking to it in small ways. Not full conversations, nothing that would make it seem real in the way sanity demands, but little acknowledgements, like tapping a wall before entering a dark room. "Don't," I whispered when I felt it behind me. "Not now," when the pressure formed beside the couch. "I'm trying," when my hands shook too hard to hold a mug. Each word tasted like surrender, and each time I spoke, the house felt fractionally more comfortable, as if my language lubricated something ancient and mechanical. That afternoon, I noticed something else. The house had a mirror I hadn't unpacked, a small one on the hallway wall, warped slightly at the edges. The glass old enough that it didn't reflect cleanly. I didn't remember hanging it. I stood before it, heart pounding. My reflection looked exhausted, but there was something wrong in the eyes, not the shape, the attention. My reflection looked like a version of me that had been listening too long. I raised my hand. The reflection raised its hand at the same time. No lag, perfect sync. The thought came from the mirror's direction, as if the glass itself had become a mouth. "You're learning to be quiet in the right way." I swallowed hard. What is the right way? The reflection's expression softened. Quiet enough for me to speak. I stepped back fast, breath ragged. The mirror remained innocent, just glass and wood. But my skin felt wrong, like I'd been standing too close to a cold window and absorbed its temperature. That night, the presence sat on the mattress again. But it didn't sit by my legs, it sat by my chest, so close that the blanket lifted slightly, not from wind but from an invisible body displacing air. The pressure on the mattress felt heavier now, not in weight, but in certainty. It had stopped testing. It had started settling. "You keep hoping I'm a symptom," it said. I didn't answer. It continued anyway. "Symptoms want relief." A pause, then colder. "I want continuation." My stomach tightened. Continuation of what? The presence shifted, as if it had considered the question before and found it uninteresting. "Of the practice." I swallowed. "What practice?" Another pause, then quietly, "Sitting." The word sounded simple. It wasn't. It was a ritual described in one syllable. Sitting as witnessing, sitting as claiming, sitting as occupying the same space night after night until the boundary between visitor and resident collapses. I whispered, "Why me?" The presence's response was immediate, unsettling in its clarity. "Because you already make room." My throat burned. I felt an urge, powerful, humiliating, to ask it to stay, not because I wanted it, because I didn't want to be alone with myself again. That urge, that weakness, was the abyss staring back. I clenched my teeth and forced the words out. "Leave." The presence did not move. The thought arrived like a gentle correction. You can't evict what you invited with silence. My whole body shook. I didn't understand the exact meaning, but I understood the implication. It believed my isolation had been permission. It believed my grief had been an open door. And worse, it believed my continuing to endure was consent. 6. At 2:17 a.m., the presence did something new. It stood up. I felt the mattress rise slightly as the weight lifted. For a moment, I thought it was leaving. Relief surged so fast it made me lightheaded. Then the pressure returned, not on the mattress, on the floor. A slow, deliberate shifting, like footsteps without sound circling the bed. My breath caught. The thought came from somewhere behind me, moving as it moved. "You keep imagining me as a body, a step. That's why you're afraid." Another step. Bodies can be fought. It stopped near the head of the mattress. The air above my face felt occupied. Then, "I'm not here to hurt you." My skin crawled. That sentence is never comforting in the mouth of something that shouldn't be speaking. The presence continued, almost patiently. "I'm here to learn how you stop hurting yourself." I felt tears spill. I hated that it had found the softest part of me, the part that wanted mercy. Then came the final line of the night, delivered with a calm that felt cosmic. "If you let me sit long enough, you won't need to wake up scared." I lay there shaking, realizing the real horror wasn't an invisible thing on my bed. The real horror was the deal it was offering. Give up your vigilance, give up your control, give up the painful, exhausting work of being you, and in exchange, rest. The abyss wasn't a monster. It was the temptation to stop resisting, and it was looking straight back at me, waiting for my agreement. The first thing it took wasn't my sleep. It was my sense of sequence. People assume madness announces itself with chaos, racing thoughts, wild behavior, obvious breaks. They're wrong. What goes first is order, the quiet, invisible agreement your mind has with time. This happened, then this, therefore that. When that agreement fractures, everything still looks normal. It just stops making sense. I started losing pieces of the day, not whole hours, not dramatic blackouts, small absences. I would stand in the kitchen holding a cup of coffee I didn't remember pouring. I would find the front door unlocked without recalling opening it. I would notice the lamp already on at night, casting the same dull circle of light I used to leave on intentionally, except now I couldn't remember deciding to do it. The presence never commented on these things. It didn't need to. Its silence felt satisfied. At night it still sat, sometimes on the bed, sometimes on the floor. Once close enough that I felt pressure on the mattress near my shoulder and the faintest dip beside my head, as if it had leaned down to inspect my face. It didn't touch me. It didn't have to. Touch is about confirmation. It was already certain. The house began to change. Not visibly, not in ways that could be photographed or proven. It changed in behavior. Doors stopped creaking. Loose floorboards grew quiet. The air felt warmer at night, colder during the day, like the place had learned my preferences. That terrified me more than decay ever could. Because decay is passive, this felt responsive. One afternoon, I moved a chair away from the bed, an unconscious act, almost instinctual. When I returned later, the chair stood exactly where it had been before, not dragged back, placed, centered, aligned with the bed as if to observe it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I whispered, "Don't." The house didn't respond, but that night the presence sat closer. It started speaking less. That should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like being watched by someone who no longer needs to ask questions. When it did speak, it no longer used full sentences, just corrections, slower. "You're tense, you don't need that thought." I caught myself obeying before realizing I had, adjusting my breathing, relaxing my shoulders, letting memories drift away unfinished. That's when I understood the scar it was carving, not fear, delegation. It was teaching my body to hand things over, responsibility, awareness, pain. The mirror became unbearable. Every time I passed it, I felt the urge to stop, to check, to confirm. When I finally gave in, I didn't recognize the expression staring back at me. It wasn't wrong, it was lighter. My eyes looked calmer, less strained, like someone who had finally stopped arguing with themselves. I hated it, because that meant the change wasn't violent, it was seductive. "You're changing me," I whispered. The response didn't come from the mirror. It came from behind me, from the space where the presence often lingered during the day. "You asked for relief." "I asked for rest," I said. A pause. Rest requires trust. My reflection smiled faintly. I didn't. That night I woke before it arrived. I lay in the dark, heart pounding, and waited. 2:15, 2:16. At 2:17 the mattress didn't dip. For a brief, intoxicating moment I thought it had gone. Then I felt pressure on my chest, not crushing, not violent, firm, like a hand resting flat over my sternum through the mattress itself, as if the bed were no longer a barrier. I couldn't breathe properly. The presence didn't sit, it loomed. The thought came slowly with deliberate care. "You don't need to wake up every time anymore." Cold spread through my limbs. "What are you doing?" I rasped. "Protecting you from exhaustion." My vision tunneled. I realized then what the permanent scar would be. Not possession, not death, erosion. If it decided when I woke, if it decided which thoughts were necessary, if it decided what pain I no longer needed to feel, then what would be left of me wasn't a person. It was a function. Morning came anyway. I sat at the kitchen table shaking, staring at my hands, trying to remember what uninterrupted wakefulness felt like. That's when I noticed something carved into the wood beneath the table. Not deep, just enough to catch light. A mark I didn't remember making. A shape that wasn't quite a symbol. Not a letter, not a word. A simple indentation, worn smooth by repetition, like the place where something always rested, where it always sat. I pressed my fingers into it. The fit was perfect. The house was no longer adapting to me. It had adapted around me. And in that moment, with a clarity that hurt more than fear ever had, I understood the truth the presence had never needed to say. It wasn't planning to leave, it was planning to remain. Long after I stopped resisting, long after I stopped noticing, long after I stopped waking up at all, the scar it left wouldn't bleed, it would simply feel normal. I didn't notice when I stopped counting the nights. That was the first sign that I was no longer the one keeping time. Before, the clock had been my anchor. Even when fear owned my body, I still knew when things happened. I could say, last night, or 2 nights ago, or at 2:17 a.m., like those numbers meant something solid. Then, one morning, I woke up and couldn't remember if the thing had sat with me the night before. Not because it hadn't, because remembering no longer felt important. The house began treating me differently. I don't mean emotionally. I mean procedurally. Lights were on when I entered rooms. Doors were open when I reached for them. The air felt already adjusted, like a thermostat, anticipating my arrival. I stopped bumping into furniture. That sounds harmless, helpful even. But it wasn't my coordination improving. It was the house moving first. One afternoon I stood in the hallway frozen, watching the door to the back bedroom slowly swing open on its own. There was no wind, no pressure change, just the smooth, practiced motion of something that knew the hinge well. The thought came without ceremony. You're allowed in here. I swallowed. I live here. A pause, then gently, for now. The bed no longer startled me. That truth filled me with shame. The mattress dipped at night and my body responded with a tired acceptance, muscles loosening instead of tensing. Sometimes I didn't even open my eyes. Sometimes I rolled slightly to give it room. The first time I did that, shifted to the side to accommodate the weight, I felt something deep inside me break. Not loudly, quietly, like a rule being erased. The presence noticed immediately. It always did. "Thank you," it said. The words were not triumphant. They were administrative. I wanted to scream that I hadn't agreed to anything. But agreement, I was learning, didn't require language. It required adjustment. My reflection stopped arguing with me. When I passed the mirror now, the face looking back didn't feel confrontational or strange. It felt resolved, calmer than I deserved to be. I stood there one evening, studying myself, trying to find something wrong, some obvious sign of invasion. There wasn't one. My posture was straighter, my breathing steadier. The constant tremor beneath my skin, the one I'd lived with since the accident, had softened. I hated that, because it meant the presence wasn't destroying me, it was improving me. "You're not me," I said to the reflection. The voice came from behind me, not from the glass. "I am what you stopped wanting to be." My throat tightened. I didn't choose this. The presence was close now, close enough that the air behind my neck felt occupied. "You chose relief." The mirror showed me nodding. I hadn't felt myself move. That night, something new happened. I woke up on the floor, not beside the bed, not tangled in sheets. On the floor, flat on my back, arms at my sides. The bed was untouched, the blanket smooth, as if no one had slept there. Panic flared, raw and sudden, but it was smothered almost instantly by a heavy calm pressing down on my chest. The presence was not sitting, it was standing, not on the floor, on the bed. I couldn't see it, but I could feel the pressure through the mattress, deeper and more centralized than ever before, centered, balanced, occupying the place where a person would stand if they were testing their weight. The thought came slowly, deliberately. "You don't need this position anymore." My voice shook. "What position?" A pause. Then, "The one where you wake up afraid." Cold spread through my limbs. "You're taking something from me." The presence adjusted, just slightly, as if settling into a more comfortable stance. "You weren't using it efficiently." I realized then what it had done. The bed, the place where it had first sat, where the ritual had begun, was no longer mine. It had graduated. During the day, I lost words. not vocabulary, ownership. I would begin a sentence and feel it dissolve halfway through, like a thought redirected before it finished forming. I was thinking became silence. I need to turned into compliance instead of action. Each interruption felt subtle, painless. But afterward, there was always the same sensation, relief. Like someone else had taken responsibility for finishing things. The presence started speaking for me in small ways, not out loud, internally. Correcting emotional responses before they reached the surface. No need to react. That memory isn't useful right now. Let it pass, and I let it. Because fighting required energy I no longer had. The final fracture came quietly. I was standing in the kitchen when I heard footsteps on the porch. Measured, confident, human. My heart lurched. For a moment, just one, I thought someone had found me. A neighbor, a stranger, proof that the world still existed beyond the house. The door opened, and I watched myself walk in. Not a copy, not a distortion. Me, same clothes, same posture, same controlled calm I'd seen in the mirror. He looked at me with something like pity. "You're still here," he said. His voice was steady, familiar, comfortable. "I live here," I whispered. He smiled gently. "I know. That's why this works." The presence moved, not behind me, not beside me, but through him, aligning perfectly, like something slipping into a glove. I understood then. It had never wanted the bed. It had never wanted the house. It had wanted practice, night after night of sitting, of adjusting, of learning how my body relaxed, how my thoughts slowed, how my guilt softened when someone else held it. I had been the rehearsal. "You don't have to do this," I said. He shook his head. "I already did." He walked past me toward the bedroom. The house reacted instantly, doors opening, air warming, space rearranging itself around his movement. Around him, I stood alone in the kitchen, suddenly cold, suddenly heavy, suddenly aware of my own weight again. From the bedroom, I heard the mattress dip, not cautiously, not gently, decisively. And then, from very far away, or maybe very close, I heard the final thought, no longer addressed to me. "This one fits better." End of chapter 5. When you're ready for the final descent, the aftermath, the echo, and the realization of what's left, say only, "I didn't disappear when it took my place." That's the lie people tell because it's easier to survive endings when they're clean. What actually happened was worse. I remained. At first I thought I was dreaming. That made sense. Dreams are where the mind puts things it doesn't want to process yet. I told myself this was my brain protecting itself, splitting, distancing, creating a narrative where the unbearable could be observed instead of felt. I stood in the kitchen watching him, me, move through the house with the confidence of someone who belonged. He poured coffee without spilling. He adjusted the lamp without hesitation. He walked through rooms without brushing walls. The house responded to him the way it never had to me, immediately, smoothly, like a well-trained animal recognizing its handler. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. Not silence, absence. I could feel the intention to speak rise in my chest and then dissolve before it reached my throat, like breath released into vacuum. That's when I understood the new rule. I could think, I could feel, but I could no longer intervene. Time became unreliable again, not fragmented like before, no missing pieces, but flattened. Everything felt simultaneous. Morning light through the window felt no different than night darkness. Hunger came and went without urgency. Fatigue existed without weight. I watched days happen without being able to mark them. He slept in the bed. I didn't. I sat, always somewhere nearby, always just out of relevance, watching the mattress dip at night under a weight that no longer frightened him. The presence didn't sit beside him anymore. It didn't need to. It had moved inside. I felt it when he woke in the morning, an efficiency, a quiet clarity that had never belonged to me. He didn't hesitate when he stood. He didn't flinch when the house creaked. He didn't pause when memories surfaced. He allowed them to pass without reaction. That was the final improvement. The mirror no longer reflected me. It reflected him. I stood inches away, trying to find myself in the glass, trying to locate some error, some leftover distortion. There wasn't one. The reflection breathed evenly. The eyes were calm. The mouth rested in a neutral line that suggested capability. He was everything I had been failing to be. The thought arrived, not spoken, not directed, simply present. "You're quieter now." I wanted to scream. Instead, I understood. Quiet wasn't absence. Quiet was compliance. People came to the house. Not many, but some. A man once, lost, claiming his car had broken down. I watched from the hallway as my face greeted him with concern and patience. The man looked tired, worn thin, the kind of tired that makes you answer questions you shouldn't. I felt panic surge, not for myself, but for him. I tried to push, tried to interfere, and for a moment, a fraction of a second, the man hesitated when my voice said his name, just long enough for confusion to ripple across his face. That hesitation hurt. The presence noticed. I felt it like a tightening. Pressure applied without touch. Not this one, it corrected. The moment passed. The man stepped inside. I don't know what happened to him. I don't want to. That's when I realized what I had become. Not a ghost, not a prisoner. A residual function. I existed in the margins, the space between hearing a name and answering it, the flicker of discomfort before trust, the instinctive pause people feel but rarely obey. I was the hesitation. The system tolerated me because I didn't threaten it. Not directly, but sometimes hesitation is enough. If you are listening to this story now, understand something. Horror doesn't always come with claws. Sometimes it comes with relief. Sometimes it sits with you quietly until you stop noticing the weight. The thing that sat on my bed didn't want my body. It wanted my habits, my responses, my willingness to surrender responsibility when exhausted. It wanted the version of me that would stop asking questions, and it got him. What's left of me exists only here, in the pause before you answer when something calls you in the dark. If tonight you feel the mattress dip beside you, if you feel that careful, polite weight, if a thought arrives that doesn't feel like yours but sounds reasonable, don't move, don't speak, don't make room, because the moment you adjust, the moment you let it sit comfortably, it won't need to practice anymore, and you won't need to disappear to be replaced.